So, a little background story. You know how there are various creatures in Monster Hunter that are interesting both in design and concept? One of them is the monk snail. This giant creature is a rare endemic life that just appears sometimes and wander around the edges of the map. Because you couldn't go near it, most people probably just glance at it and move on with their life. You know, doing the actual gameplay. I originally played the game on Switch Lite, and so, even though I tried to observe it with a binocular, I simply couldn't fully grasp what I was looking at. Because the Japanese name is Umiushi Bozu, I simply thought it's an umibozu, but a sea slug. But then, last week, I finally stumbled upon its model, and when I look at it, my brain immediately went, oh, that's just Aplysia. And so I told my friend, hey, did you know that monk snail is just Aplysia? And she was like, what is Aplysia? And I was like, sea hare. And she was like, what's a sea hare? And then I thought, wait, are they not a popular animal? I thought most people would know about them. Then I decided to make this video, just in case it's not popular enough. So, let me bring up the question. What exactly is Aplysia? Aplysia are sea slugs, which means they are mollusks and they are gastropod. Now, most people would know that there are a lot of gastropods. It's a really big class. However, based on my experience, many people didn't realize how vast sea slug as a group is. Sea slug is not exactly a taxonomy group. Sea slugs are whatever shellless gastropods living in the sea basically. Now, most people, or at least those who are interested in animals on a quote-unquote surface level, would think sea slug is nudibranch. Oh, by the way, nudibranch should be the correct pronunciation based on its etymology, but I'm just gonna call them nudibranch because I think most people are familiar with that pronunciation. But anyway, while nudibranch are all sea slug is not equal to nudibranch. Various groups of sea slugs are not nudibranch, including the topic of this video. Nudibranch or nudibranch is called nudibranch because they have branchias that are nudus. Branchia is gill, while nudus is naked. They are named that way because their gills are exposed, these things on their back. Other sea slugs don't have this trait. And yeah, one of those other sea slugs are the sea hares. Sea hares are called sea hares because, well, to put it very simply, they are chunky and they look like a hare sitting on the bottom of the ocean. Oh, and while nudibranch are carnivorous, sea hares are herbivorous. So yeah, sea hare. Now, the question of which taxonomic rank is equivalent to sea hare is debatable. The highest rank would be the order Aplysidae itself. Oh, by the way, this order was called Aplysiomorpha during several periods of time, but now Aplysidae is the most commonly accepted name. There are two major groups in this order, Acheridae and Aplysidae. Those in the Acheridae family have external shell. And now I ask you, have you ever seen a hare with a shell? Probably not, right? And so, I personally don't like to call the whole order sea hares. Emphasis on personally, by the way. I don't mind it, not against it, but I personally prefer not to. Now to the Aplysidae family. I personally think if you want an equivalent of sea hare in the taxonomic sense, this would be it. This is still a diverse group though. Worms listed 10 valid extant genera. Most of them have multiple species, especially the topic of this video, Aplysia. Aplysia itself is a big genus, no pun intended by the way. Worms listed more than 40 valid species, and even more species of dubious validities. Oh, by the way, I think they share the same etymology as the Aplysia sponge. If they do, then their name basically means unwashed, aka dirty. Because, well, let's just say it's understandable why they are called that way. They can mostly be found around the tropical coasts, but can also be found towards the northern Atlantic Ocean. And now, let's talk about their morphology. But before that, while they do have the same general body form, Their morphology could vary because they are simply that diverse. Some of them are only around 2 to 12 centimeters long, like Aplysia oculifera for example. Meanwhile, some of them are large. Aplysia vaccaria, the black sea hare, can reach 75 centimeters long and weighing more than 7 kilograms. I've read some articles stating it can reach 99 centimeters long and 14 kilograms of weight, but even if we stick with the 75 centimeters long, it is still the largest sea slug that currently exists. Largest gastropod even. I believe the second largest sea slug is the California sea hare, which is also an Aplysia by the way, Aplysia californica. Or perhaps Aplysia gigantea, which can be found in southwestern Australia. So yeah, like I said earlier, they are known to be chonky. Some of them have ornaments on their dorsal, some have particular spots or maybe some patterns. Meanwhile, some look relatively simple. Like I said, the morphology could vary because they are simply that diverse. They have 4 sensory tentacles, 2 around the mouth called oral tentacles, and 2 above the head called rhinophores. Or you could just pronounce it rhinophores if that's easier. Their rhinophores give them the rabbit ear look, which is debatable, but yeah. They also have eyes, which in some species could look like camera eyes, but unfortunately, these are still a relatively simple ocelli, and as with many other sea slugs, their vision is not that good. They mostly sense their surrounding with their sensory tentacles. As with many other gastropods, they have radula, and this is what they use to eat. When looking at various species in this genus, you would see these flap thingies on their dorsal. These are called parapodia. In idle state, their parapodia are folded upwards, covering their back like this. And now the question is, what are these things covering? And the answer is, some important things actually, namely their gill and siphon. However, uncovering their parapodia also reveals their internal shell, which is a relatively thin and flattened, slightly convex plate, basically there as extra protection for their mantle cavity. Besides those things, there are also some glands, which we'll talk about in the ecology section. Actually, let's move on to that section right now. Aplysia typically resides on the photic zone of the sea, less than 200 meters depth. Photic zone is the zone where sunlight could reach the bottom of the ocean, by the way. One of the characteristics of photic zone is the high rate of photosynthesis, which means the abundance of photosynthetic organism, which includes algae. And why did I specify that, you might ask? Well, algae are the main diet of Aplysia. Different species consumes different types of algae. Some also graze on seagrasses. But yeah, like I said earlier, they are herbivorous. Most of them just crawl around on the bottom, which is a relatively slow way of moving. However, some species could swim by utilizing their parapodia, which could be faster when they need to flee from something. Quite the sight to see. More commonly though, when disturbed, they will release this ink cloud from the gland in their mantle cavity. Different species could release different color of ink cloud, but that's mostly because they consume different kinds of algae. Color is not the only thing that they got from their food though. Some algae are also known for their toxicity, and so Aplysia could concentrate these toxins and release them together with the ink cloud. Even if it's not toxic enough for some predators, it is still unpalatable for the predators. So yeah, not only does it function as a smokescreen, it could also harm the attacker, or at the very least, it will deter predator, hence making it effective as a defensive maneuver. But wait, there's more. Their ink gland is not the only defensive tool they got. They also have opaline gland, which secretes opaline. Opaline is the slime-like secretion, and it basically functions as how a slime would function. And that is, it sticks to the predators, making movement awkward, and it disorients them. And yeah, those are the two secretions utilized by most Aplysia to deter predator. However, I did say most Aplysia. Aplysia vaccaria, which is the biggest of them all, does not even secrete ink, and I think they couldn't even swim. They still accumulate toxin in their body though, but yeah, The fact that they don't secrete ink is one of the reasons why you would see a lot of images of people holding them. Because it's safe. And also the fact that they kinda look huggable or squishable, I suppose. But anyway, another thing that we observe from Aplysia is the rapid withdrawal of their gill and siphon, aka GSWR, which is gill and siphon withdrawal reflex. And yeah, that is an official term. I am not making that up. In fact, there is even a dedicated Wikipedia page for that. But anyway, sea hares are hermaphrodites. However, they still need to mate with another individual to reproduce. The smaller individual usually serves as the male, while the larger individual serves as the female. They secrete protein pheromones to stimulate mating. We originally knew about attractin first, then several years later, we discovered 3 other protein pheromones that react to attractin, which are antistin, temptin, and seductin. And again, yeah, those are the official names. Quite something, huh? They can store and digest the sperm after they received it, and they can mate with multiple individuals. They will lay egg masses, which consists of tons of eggs in a gelatinous ring. Different species could lay different colors of egg mass. By the way, I've seen some articles stating this looks like a spaghetti. And to that, I kinda wanna ask this question. What kind of spaghetti have people been eating? But anyway, the embryo will develop into trochophores, which still resides in the egg. It will develop into veliger at around day 10, and then the eggs will hatch at around day 10 to 15. At this stage, they are free swimming, but they will develop propodium, their food basically, and they will seek a place to settle soon. As they settle, they will continue to develop into their adult form. Aplysia grow and develop quickly, as they typically only live for a year. And yeah, that is Aplysia. The things we know about them are mostly based on just a couple of species though. There are many more species that we are lacking data and observations of, so who knows what we'll learn in the future. But for now, let's just learn what is known. And that's all for now. Oh, by the way, Aplysia is often used by neurobiologists to study neurons and electrical synapses. That is exactly why the gill and siphon withdrawal reflex is such a specific recurring topic, by the way. Anyway, enjoy your day.